everybody, welcome back. So what we did on the board here, for those of you who can see it, we have Vertalu's natal chart in black in the center. You also have a copy of that chart in your handouts. And then around it in blue, we have put the solar return from 1999, when he had his, 1995, thank you, correct that, Neptune. 1995, when he had each of his lungs collapse within a few weeks of each other, correct? Within 6 weeks, 6 weeks apart. And so, again, I've not done it this way a lot, but I really liked this. That solar return that's going around the chart, it's really the snapshot of the transits at that time. That, well, not at that time, the last solar return that he had had. And so any of the things circled are actually the solar return, and the ascendant fell right here at 7-8 Cancer, with a descendant at 7-8 Capricorn. And the MC fell up here at 18-19 Pisces, down here to 18-19 degrees Virgo. Okay? And so, Vertalu shared with us some of the events. Let's just start looking at this chart. And how about if we look at this chart from the point of view of the natal chart first, and then we can start adding in those solar return marks as well. And so we have a 6th house cusp that is Libra, which is ruled by Venus. Venus is over there in that 1st house in Gemini. We have a Gemini rising. One of the things that I wanted to say, oh, that's okay, that's all right, and I should probably make sure that my voice is being heard. We also will have 5th house Pluto conjunct the North Node. We've got Jupiter there, Cancer 2nd, square the nodes. So as I start looking at some repeating themes in this chart, one of the things that was sticking out for me is fluctuating levels of energy, the air energy. You put, what you know how we've been practicing with that 6th house cusp? Let's just work with that one a little bit to start with. If you put Libra on the 6th house cusp, what would be some of the things that we've learned about Libra?
I have a question.
Go for it.
Diving into that, I don't think you've mentioned it yet. In terms of health and wellness, how this would play out with the intercepted 6/12 axis.
Oh yeah, intercepted 6/12. Good, thank you. That one too. That's a good one to take into consideration with this. And so, anybody have any comments that they want to start out with?
On interceptions?
Either one, the Libra and then the Scorpio, and you see that you have that Uranus in Scorpio there.
Well, I mean, interceptions also, it can be that you've mastered it or you haven't mastered it.
Right.
So, I mean, the idea of Uranus in the 6th house in Scorpio, and then all those Taurus planets, which so have to do with the body, such a profound relationship to the body. And I mean, it seems to me that maybe there needs to be more work done on the body with you. I mean, I was thinking it was interesting that the 6th house cusp, Libra, that Venus in Gemini in the 1st house, I mean, lungs, that right there is there to me. And with the Uranus in the 6th house, which is the wound to the respiratory system too, you know, which is Uranus and the electrical system. I mean, the bone issue, his femur issue, I'm not necessarily seeing. But lungs, I mean, with Libra, we talked about blood disorders. Did we talk about blood disorders with Libra?
The Libra side of Venus will equate white blood cells.
White blood cells, that's
it. It can equate with blood disorders. It can relate with the kidneys. It can relate with the ducts of the kidneys. Libra, Venus in men will be estrogen, although they need just a little bit of it. It will also relate to cortisone
Mm-hmm.
as well. But yes, one of the things I was noticing, first of all, that Libra on the 6th house cusp, I was this is a Pluto and Libra generation. One of the things that I've noticed with Libra energy is fluctuation. You could notice that to a certain extent with all of your air signs. You will notice that with Gemini. You will notice that with Libra. With Aquarius, sometimes you can notice the yo-yo, but you can also start to notice spasms start to come in with Aquarius with that. And so that was the first thing that jumped out on me with this Libra rising on the 6th and Venus over there in Gemini in the 1st house, is that this could be fluctuating levels of energy, sometimes high energy, sometimes low energy. There's just a natural ebb and flow that'll start to come. That would be reiterated by the Pluto in Libra, by the North Node in Libra, even by Jupiter square the nodes. And the reason that I would start to get the fluctuating energy is because Jupiter down there in the 2nd, that survival issue, you square those nodes in Libra Aries, that would not only be the fluctuating energy, there's trauma sometimes around. To me, I was picking up on this physiologically, trauma being in the physical body. Do I want to be in the physical body? Yeah. Kim, you wanted to say something?
Well, I was going to say part of the stress of Libra 2 can be from the polarity of Aries, the adrenal glands.
Correct. Good one. Yep.
And just another observation, Neptune does oppose that Venus, and the ruler of the opposing Neptune is Jupiter in the 2nd, which again brings us right back to the body, reiterated by the fact that it's in Cancer, so the ruler is the moon in the 4th, so it's a repeat. I think that's a general weakener, that Neptune opposite the Venus, the ruler of the 6th.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And especially with all of those Neptunian type body functions.
Mm-hmm.
So that
the hard to figure out
the hard
functions.
to figure out ones. And it's when we were talking with Verdeluz earlier, and well, how do you feel? What is it that feels? And he was saying, well, I don't know. I just like this, and I don't know. It just feels like kind of very Neptunian.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
But Kimmery, what Neptune can, when you bring Neptune into the picture, it's the glandular things, is it?
It's the endocrine issue. Neptune is the overall ruler of the pineal gland. Mm-hmm. Okay, Neptune rule the pineal gland with the melatonin. Sometimes when our melatonin fluctuates, we can have fluctuating experiences of feeling like, am I in my body or am I not in my body? And with it opposing this Venus, you can see where there can be stressed out white blood cells. There could be some overall low-grade stress to the immune system. So there can either be an overproduction of the white blood cells because everything feels like it's being kind of attacked in some way, or you could even have to the point where the white blood cells fluctuate. Opposition aspect, Neptune, Venus, Gemini, Sag, 1st, 7th. And then you could have where there could be a depletion of the white blood cells, and the white blood cells don't work correctly when there is something that is attacking the body, so to speak, or a foreign thing that could be in the body.
And I just noticed this thing with the fact that obviously he's going to have to deal with the organic body in this life, right?
Yes.
I mean, there's no question, we can see it. And then it just popped out here. Moon in Virgo, natural ruler of the 6th.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Also, what we were mentioning too, when you look at this, Scorpio Taurus intercepted in the 6th house. And when we start to look at this, physiologically, and you look at those Taurus planets in there, you see Mercury, you see Chiron, you see the Sun, they're all intercepted, they're all in that 12th house. Lots of times when you see a sun in the 12th, you see Pluto in the 12th, you see Saturn in the 12th, that can be someone who can have a weakened life force. Do I want to be here in the physical form? It's too hard or too painful or too messy or too cruel to be here in the physical body. And you could start to see this now reiterated by a south node in Aries in the 11th. Trauma to the emotional body and the ego from past lives. And so that will reiterate that whole theme. So one of the things that I also start to see is this repeated theme of enough life force to be in the body. Just an overall, do I want to be in the body? And so look at how we have a 5th house Pluto conjunct the North Node. I must come here and work on my life force this lifetime. Not just the creativity. You can definitely see the creativity that has to come from out of a 5th house Pluto, but also just the life force. I have a right to be here. I want to be here. You see Libra on that Pluto conjunct the North Node in the 5th, and so again, it's a reiterating theme to the fluctuating energies of level in the body, the fluctuating life force that could go on a deep soul level. And I'm going to stop for a moment for...
You know, and I'm also looking at that South Node in Aries, and Aries on the 12th house cusp, and then I'd look to the ruler, which is Mars, and Leo there, conjunct Saturn in the 4th. And Leo, I mean, that Mars does have some nice aspects, but it also has that square to Uranus there. And that's that's trauma, I think, at a deep, like, fundamental level, 4th house of how you feel about yourself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like deep, deep feelings of self-love, profound, that have been traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
That's through that 11th house ruler of that South Node.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the 12th house on the cusp.
Can I just,
Go for it.
you were talking about the interceptions and the location of those planets in the 12th. I was trying to delineate if you were saying in general both the planets in the 12th and the interceptions have the same effect. Like, is there a general thing with an intercepted 6th and 12th in terms of health? Is the health just automatically going to be an issue then? You know?
When you have planets in the 6th and the 12th, whether they are intercepted or not, you will have issues with life force in the body. If they're intercepted, it could put more emphasis on the issue. Okay? Let's just play with this one, all right? We see that if we have an interception of Scorpio and Taurus, if it's Scorpio in that 6th house, there could have been traumas from past lives, emotional traumas from past lives that affect the body, not even looking at Uranus, just Scorpio intercepted in the 6th house. Emotional traumas from that affected the body in past lives, intercepted, past lives. You put Taurus in that 12th house, intercepted, and again, am I going to be in my physical body or not? You start to put them in Taurus, Scorpio, it could bring in the sexuality issues to it as well. You put that Uranus in Scorpio, intercepted in the 6th. Emotional traumas that affected the physical body, emotional sexual traumas. I mean, I picked up on a flash, and this is to me also reiterated with Jupiter and Cancer square the nodes. I mean, I'm back, 5,000 years ago down in the Incas, and this was the child sacrificed for the crops. I don't, go ahead,
My
Pam.
question to you is, Kimberly, what if, let's just do a theoretical where, say he had mastered the body. How different would it look in his physical body? Would he never get sick? How do you think that, or there?
Yes, if you
Okay.
were looking at a strong Scorpio Taurus in here, you would have someone who would have extremely strong Taurus life force. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, what you can look at with this Scorpio Taurus intercepted in the 6th and the 12th, this is a soul, if he wants to key into this fifth house Pluto and decide to strengthen life force, this is someone who can do those miraculous, spontaneous healings. But it's the will of the soul deciding, I have a right to be here. I want to be here. And then going for it. And you see this reiterated with this Jupiter in Cancer down there in the second square of the notes. Chris?
Well, I think when you said that thing about the Inca sacrifice, lung collapse, I think you're right.
The breath.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely.
Now, Uranus rules the lining of the lungs. Mercury rules the lungs. Uranus can come in. They can both come in and start co-ruling the lungs. We've got Uranus in the sixth house, and so the breath of the lungs. This is someone that I, looking at this stuff, would need to kind of do some recovery work and learn how to strengthen the breath. So this might be someone who could be attracted to the types of healing modalities that involve breath work. And I don't know that it relates to Scorpio so much, but I was one of those souls who came in who was a lot of trauma. And so sometimes when you see traumatized souls, they cower in their body. If you've seen this time and time again, the slumped shoulders, you know, they just are afraid for the next thing that's going to come out and get them. And so they're all closed in this chest cavity. And so traumatized souls have to learn to straighten the spine and stand up and do breath work. Can you see that, where this could be iterated with this Uranus in the sixth?
Well, and also the ruling planet is Mercury conjunct Chiron in my whole chart. And so, yeah, I think the relationship there with the lungs is really quite obvious too, and that there's going to be a source of both both wounding and healing. I mean, I've done a lot of pranayama work in the last 7 years of my life, and I do a lot of deep breathing work and qigong and all of that. But I come from that very wounding experience around it, and it's sometimes not that easy to do, you know. But I love it. So.
Chris?
Just that the MC is ruled by that Uranus, which of course then underlines the square, right? Because then it by virtue of its rulership of the MC, it forms an opposition to the Mars. But I do notice that sweet little Juno asteroid conjunct the MC. So it's really through finding the appropriate partner to facilitate him that he might be able to work through some of these issues. You know, it's very important, I think, in his, especially with his being the Pluto and Libra conjunct the North Node.
Yeah, Pluto and Libra
Partnership
generation.
really must be key, I think.
Partnerships are key, but when you have Pluto and Libra in the fifth, it's important to be in partnerships from a point of view of equality. This is a soul that will have to be careful of pulling in strong partners who want to control. And so you really want to have an equality in the relationship. And when the equality is there, it can be very helpful, very healing.
Absolutely, and with Juno being in an Aquarius conjunct the MC, that's the kind of partnership he should be pursuing. That's where he's going to start to feel free in that aspect of his psyche.
Free to be different,
Free to be different, free to be free.
right?
Where do you
Him.
get the attracting strong partners?
You put Aquarius on the 10th house, and you can, and Juno, asteroid Juno, okay, right up there on the midheaven, you can attract in the partner who wants to be in charge, the partner who wants to control, 10th house, the partner who wants to be the boss or the leader. So it becomes very important that Pluto and Libra, you know, in the fifth, they'll only be able to allow that person to do it so much, and then they're going to, something's going to have to affect, it's always going to be getting to better, the next level of equality of giving and receiving with that.
That's, just a comment. I think it might be helpful too. I don't want to get too off topic, but like I always looked at that Juno midheaven conjunction as either I'm going to be married to my work, which is everything
Yeah.
I do,
Typical.
I do that, or I'm going to be working with my partner,
Yep.
or both. And then I just saw that, well, there's a square with Chiron and Juno, and,
Yeah.
as well as Mercury. But like, so doing healing work with my partner is, it has to be what it's about. And so, yeah, that's why it's interesting to meet someone with the moon conjunct my midheaven in Juno.
Yep.
Very powerful.
Yep, exactly. Another thing that I saw, just moving forward also, the Uranus-Mars square, and you see you see this in the 6th and the 4th, all right? Mars-Uranus stressful aspects can create spasms in the muscles of the body, or spasms in the lung. And so you look at this whole lung issue that he went through. When your lungs collapse, they fill with fluids. There's no air, correct? And so here's Mars down there in the 4th house, and Mars in Leo. And so here's a collapsing of life force again, wanting to see life force there in the Leo part of Mars. And also Sun square Saturn. Saturn in Leo. Anytime you see a stressful Saturn-Sun aspect, many times, especially that square, that can be decreased life force and vitality.
Can you speak to the sun? I don't know what you call this, I can't remember, but like on an angular relationship there with the ascendant, is it balsamic?
Yes, the sun is balsamic to
The
the
ascendant.
So your whole creative potential, your whole self-creative actualization is finishing up a long, long cycle of doing it a certain way, Taurus, and rebirth, getting ready to rebirth to do it a different way. It's going to relate to this 5th house Pluto conjunct the North Node and wanting to be creative, and then just discovering this whole, looking at how to be creative in completely new and different ways. So, and it's like taking all the old talents, Sun balsamic at the end of the chart, and taking all these old talents that you spend lifetimes learning and now bringing them forth in new and different ways. Chris?
Verdeluz mentioned to me, this is just for extra information, that he was a C-section baby.
Ah.
Son in the 12th.
Yeah, but you know what? It's still the same. People ask me that. Well, do C-sections, do drugs, do all kinds of things interfere with that birth moment? And, I'm of the understanding every time I've looked at a chart, that chart sure seems to match that person. Mm-hmm. And so this was probably a higher design by soul.
Absolutely higher design, but just the physical trauma.
Yes, gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Physical trauma coming out of the womb with a C-section, and look at that Mars, Saturn, Moon in the 4th. Oh, yeah. And I'm looking at this Jupiter in Cancer. That's square the nodes here in these fixed signs, cardinal or fixed houses, cardinal signs. I'm also coming back to Jupiter's joy. Jupiter is life, and Jupiter's the liver physiologically, and our ability to really process through life. And putting it in Cancer, putting it in Taurus, that sometimes there's blockages. So it could be that if there's blockages to life force or our ability to be engaged in life, that will then come through with some types of physical blockages. You know, and again, this Neptune, you know, in the 7th. First of all, Neptune in the 7th, this is someone who gets to be extremely sensitive to other people, which will then reiterate this thing of always trying to be in relationships that are balanced or equal rather than unequal. And with Jupiter in the 2nd, square the nodes, one of the things that you can find from the archetype of Taurus and Scorpio, or the 2nd and 8th, is sometimes that whole archetype of entrapment or slavery. And this can be reiterated by the 12th house. So the other thing that I get from this soul in a past life is entrapment, slavery. Physically, literally being slave.
Plus the moon in Virgo.
Plus moon in Virgo. And so then the question becomes with this Jupiter there square the nose, and Jupiter in Cancer. Cancer is the archetype that would relate to African American. Okay? It also, through the Aries Libra, can relate to the Roman time periods as well. And so this could be a soul who's bounced back and forth between being the slave, possibly the master. But what I pick up is both. And what I pick up most recently is the slave side of the equation as a sense of any atonement that was necessary, but then getting trapped in it, getting trapped up in all of these patriarchal judgments that's come through Christianity in the last 1,000 years, this moon in Virgo down there in the 4th, and now needing to break free out of that kind of conditioning. Jess?
I have a question, generalized, and it may apply back to the health and wellness, but when looking at a chart, we oftentimes, especially taking classes, what I hear a lot is we'll talk about trauma that exists in a birth chart, but I don't hear a lot of talk about some trauma is not caused by others to the soul. Some trauma is caused by the soul itself, inflicting trauma onto other people, and we hold that. And if we've evolved past it, and you just started to touch on it, having that sense of atonement or whatnot, and so how does that play in, I guess, to this whole health and wellness and almost creating illness as a form of feeling like you owe something back? Does that make sense?
Or you're not worthy of having any life force because you took somebody else's life force out in a past life. Well, how I look at it also is by the time you're sitting around a table like this, there isn't one of us at this table who hasn't murdered somebody. So we need to, look at some of this in balance, okay? But what can happen to the soul is it's naturally wanting to evolve, and it comes to a sense of atonement. Relative to the Piscean age, and relative to the Virgo sub-age of the Piscean age of the last 1,000 years, we could get caught up in the atonement equation to the point where we over-atone. We get caught up in it, then we go forth playing the victim. And so it's coming to find the balance of that where we're not either extreme of victim or victor. Go ahead,
And
Jess.
how would you see the differentiation, if it matters, I guess, between the two in a chart when you're looking?
Well, when I work with people, because I don't claim to be a psychic, and I think very few of us are evolved enough to see the past lives well enough to know, I just bring up the whole situation like we've discussed it, not pointing anything in either way, just saying consider from this extreme to that extreme, from this side of the equation to that side of the equation, and ask the soul who we're looking at to say what feels good inside of you, what feels like it's natural, or which side of the equation feels right for you. You look at Aquarius, you look at a South Node in the 11th in Aries, this is someone who could have been a warrior. But this is also someone who could have been traumatized as a child and got wiped out as a child, never had a chance to grow up. You could see this soul on both sides of the equation, and now this soul is trying to bring it into balance.
Kimberly, can you
But-
please speak to the
Go-
node square Jupiter?
That's what I've just been speaking about.
No, but
On a
okay, I'm
physiological
sorry.
level?
Yeah, physiological.
On a physiological level, it was when I was talking about the liver. You could come into blood issues, and the liver, Jupiter, cancer, fluids in the liver, toxicities in the liver, second house that build up. The Aries Libra, you could see the blood, and you could see the red blood cells and the white blood cells, and so physiologically, you could see issues with the liver, and the liver is one of those organs that, again, is a silent organ. It doesn't always let you know something. You don't feel pain like you do a headache, but you feel, ugh. You know, you feel that something's not quite right. You know, and so you can be looking at this physiologically, or maybe it's the liver's ability to process through life, and maybe there's some sluggish blood there with the Aries Libra, you know, ruling all of the blood and the kidneys and that ability to process through life. So you're seeing that, you're looking at it that physiologically. But remember, we always have to look at healing on all 4 levels. And so then we've been, you know, bouncing back and forth between the metaphysical and the physiological. And so here's someone, again, what I keep seeing is this repeating theme of feeling that I deserve to be alive. And also it can be some of the choice making. Do I want to be here? And if I'm going to be here, you know, choosing to be, you know, to go for life force, to gather life force. The other thing that I could see that could go on with this, and I can hold my thought for Leroy.
Oh, I was just trying to get back to the blood issue with that Mars in Leo square the lining of the lungs, Uranus in the 6th. And of course, what happened is, you know, he had that solar return of that transiting Mars, moved over that area, and then quickly triggered this event when it hit that Saturn in Leo. So again, it was the consciousness affected, but it was really physiologically the blood issue in the lungs that caused the collapse, or the lack of blood, perhaps, with that transiting Mars hitting that Mars-Saturn in the natal chart.
Okay. We can start moving into the solar return chart. You know, is a little bit, one thing that just had popped into my mind as I was looking at this chart, and I'm looking at these planets in the 12th house, and I'm looking at Jupiter's rulership of the liver, and looking at the Mars down there in the 4th, I was looking for anger, and it's almost like when it's like, you know, do I want to be here? That's a question, okay? But then there's this whole question of, do I deserve to be here? And if we have a soul with this Jupiter square the nodes in Aries 11th, you know, 5th Libra, we could have had these lifetimes of the warrior where fluff you, and then we could have these lifetimes of, you know, I deserve all of this punishment. What I was kind of picking up on is perhaps unconscious anger that does not know how to be expressed, and anger perhaps even sometimes almost as a mechanism for bringing in life force. And so can you start to see then with this Jupiter ruling the liver rules anger, okay? Planets in the 12th house, some of the unconscious anger, so there could be some anger that we could be stuck in. And so rage could be something healthy for this person. And if this person does not feel safe in expressing anger, this could be the person who needs to go to the mountaintop and scream at the top of their lungs, and that process drawing in life force.
And wouldn't also the emphasis of, I'm sorry.
Can you hold it? Okay, go for it, honey.
That's really interesting because, you know, I've listened to like heavier, more intense music soul music for a long time, rock music. And then I started playing music like 12 years ago. But even over the last few years, my styles have changed, and what the music I make, I've changed a little bit, but I still write heavy music, like really. And when I play it, like I've even said this, it's like I never feel that alive. I never feel that alive like playing like as I do playing something, especially on an electric guitar. You know, Mars, Uranus, and Jupiter, sextile Uranus. But so that's a really interesting thing because I feel like it does. It makes me feel like more vital, more alive, and so that's just a really interesting observation. It feels like a healing thing for me. You know.
It took me, I was never allowed to freely express anger as a child, and yet I lived in a very angry household, so I was, and I'm not saying you were, but I'm just talking in general. People can have such distortions of anger, and I have a lot of water in my chart, so it was a big aha for me when I recognized, oh, the emotional body means all the emotions, and the whole range of emotions can have a part in the healing process. You know, because I was raised by two Libra parents where you always had to have a nice smile on your face and you were always happy and you're always friendly and just want to bust you. You know, you know. And so you know, when you can learn to have healthy expressions of anger, it is life-giving. And I see that with this Jupiter, Cancer, square these nodes. And so there's parts of you, I would say there's past lives where you've tried to express the anger and lost your life for it. And so now you've got to go, this time it is different, this time it is different.
And like the Saturn conjunct the Mars being in Leo, creator, artist, you know, ruler of the South Node, it seems like it is like it could never be at a point where it could really overpower other people because the Saturn won't let that. You know,
Yeah.
it has to be something, and with the fourth house,
Yes.
it has to be something like refined and like I have to work with it first. And so it's never, it hasn't really been like a reactive thing, but there is a lot like my favorite word is intense. You know, I use that word all the time, and like I come from that place with everything I do, and so like I think that's part of that, you know. But yeah,
Safe ways to express. Yeah, that life force energy.
I mean, the thing that I was thinking about a lot with that 4th house, 12th house emphasis also with the rage is it would become so internalized. And it would end up being, it's like, you know what I mean? I think that one has to be really cautious of that. It's like, it might not look pretty all the time, but I think the sense of making sure it doesn't, you don't take it out on yourself. Because
Oh.
I can see
Bingo.
that
When-
really
when-
profound, in ways that you wouldn't even know, because repressed rage can come in so many different forms.
Yeah.
Because it's, I mean, with all that Taurus, you know, beauty is a huge issue, and rage is, and like, you know, even if it's not aesthetically pleasing rage, you know, it's like, you know, it's just kind of, you know, allow it to be, you know. I mean, I think that.
Well,
I
and-
just worry about him internalizing. That's
Well,
my-
and this is why, look at the resolution node for this Jupiter, the Aries in the 11th house, the person, you know, to go off to be alone, to express the rage alone, until this person can learn healthy ways of being able to express feelings in the moment. Jess?
Go back and I want to ask you to point something out, and then once I can see it, I have a question about it. You had said it seems almost as though the soul could have potentially lost his life as a result of expressing anger. Where do you see that, first of all?
Aries 11th, Jupiter square the nodes, second house.
Okay. So,
And as a child, Cancer, Aries.
okay.
And so he could also have been, again, that's where I also saw the same thing, an Incan lifetime as the sacrificial lamb, the child that was sacrificed to grow the crops.
Go to the Gemini rising in this life.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
So, and I now have a question that's not necessarily pertaining to this chart, but could you point out a possibility of how you would see this, or how would it look different, if it would look different at all, if there was a situation going back to that atonement, the whole over-atonement thing? What would it be like if this soul, rather than losing his life as a result of expressing anger, what if in a tirade of expressing anger, somebody else's life was lost and it was not intentional, and there was a
Correct.
lot of guilt and a lot
Correct.
of how would that
Yes.
manifest?
This would be someone who was a warrior in an army, and the whole army went to battle, and they got into the heat of it and killed women and children. And then afterwards, no.
Okay.
And that's why you've got to do the observation correlation thing, and that's why you always take it back to the soul to discern the best answers for themselves. And when you see it coming out as the planets square the nodes, they can be on both sides of the fence, which creates the confusion and the blockage.
Well, and I'm asking because I think for some souls it's almost harder to get over a trauma of, oh my God, I did this to somebody else, as opposed to somebody did this to me. You know, I think some
Yes.
souls have a harder time recovering those steps.
at this point, like I have such an kind of abhorrence for violence, you know, and I don't know, just growing up in America, but like, you know, as a boy, I was always peaceful, but I loved like shoot 'em up games we were talking about, or a lot of like, you know, martial arts movies and football and like all that stuff. And then as I've gotten older and, you know, done more spiritual work, like I can't even watch many violent movies anymore. It's just like, that's not my vibration anymore. So like that, I feel like there may have been something like that, where I had maybe done something, or I feel like there was royalty too. That I don't know if the Mars and Leo, but there's parts of me that feel like,
Fifth house Pluto.
yeah, that feel like there was a royalty, but even my position maybe didn't allow me to be as compassionate as I really wanted to be.
Yep.
You know, and so that's maybe why I come in with the Moon in Virgo, that Mars in the fourth, you know, and Saturn square the Sun, so that all of this real creative stuff I want to do, like, and serve the world with, I have to really refine it, and like I can't have it handed to me like maybe I did as a prince or something like that, you know, so I come from the right place. That's something I've been working on.
And as we move forward into touching on something we haven't worked with yet, which is transits, and that transiting Saturn over this Virgo moon. You know, when you have a Virgo moon, you've really got to work on self-forgiveness. And if you see that Virgo moon in the fourth house, you have to work on emotional self-forgiveness. And here's Saturn transiting over that 3 times as it's just leaving. You know, having to work through this over the last, 6 months, 9 months. And I think it could tie into perhaps some of this whole issue of, the self-forgiveness, the self-love, the I deserve to be here, I'm worthy of being here. And then, in some regards, this is the thing that I have found about oppositions and planets square the nodes. You see them all over the place. And if you start to observe people, in one moment they're the nice, happy person, and the next moment they're a bitch, or one moment, they're playing the victim, and the next moment they're trying to control you. Oppositions and planets square the nodes. You see opposing energies that are expressed, that are trying to work their way out. And when we talked about the possibilities that there could be some unconscious anger or rage that's not allowed to express, and again, that there could need to be some ways that it could be expressed. And with that Virgo moon, this is somebody who maybe it was expressed somehow in past lives and family dynamics that didn't turn out too bad, and there's a fear of being able to express some of that stuff.
Yeah, and also just like seeing it growing up, and like my mother, moon in Scorpio, sun in Pisces, and very consensus, yelling, angry for no reasons, you know, and at a father who was very Libran, who is a very peaceful person, and just because she has so much moving through her that needs to be expressed, so naturally that kind of anger and rage had an illogical component to me, irrational. And so like the expression of it was just had no basis. So I don't react very well with that. I just turn away.
Right.
So,
Chris?
yeah, I was just going to say that I really resonated when you said, Kim, when you brought in the thing of the warrior archetype. And I think, considering, you know, what our sweet boy, how he's
Everybody
built.
wants to mother him?
Yeah.
You got a half a dozen mothers here, honey.
One was a
Yeah, I think that warrior archetype really resonated with me, and it feels to me like a very karmic signature,
Yeah.
repeated, you know, by the square to the nodes, the Pluto in the fifth house, you know, conjunct the north node, which happens to be moving direct. Rare, a rare occurrence.
Say that again?
Oh, nodes direct.
Nodes direct.
Nodes direct.
Nodes direct people are, it's almost like a times 10, right? Pluto and then,
The nodes have a mean motion of retrograde, and the nodes are only direct 10% of the time. But nodes direct people can figure life out a little faster than nodes retrograde people.
very clear focus, very clear focus. And so that's really a gift.
Yes.
Because to me, when I all of a sudden saw that, I thought, oh, well, he's going to figure this out.
Yep.
Because he's got work to do, so no worries here. You're
Yep.
going to figure it out.
Yep.
And which is why he's here. It's great. It's great. I love it that your nodes are direct.
Okay, so we're so karmically drawn, or we're so drawn to look at this chart from a metaphysical viewpoint, which is very helpful because it will understand some of these physical manifestations. So let's take all these many themes that we're working with here and let's condense them down into the physiological body. Can we see via Jupiter? Can we see via sometimes the unconscious rage that is not allowed to express, the stuck energy that comes in, the stagnation that wants to come through? Can we see where this Jupiter square the nodes, that we can have issues with the blood? Could we see that sometimes perhaps cleansing the blood will allow this person to cleanse the emotions, cleanse the thoughts, this cleanse the life force? Cleansing the blood, this is true for all of us. Like, can you see that with this soul? And again, we have someone who just gets, you know, weird stuff going on in the body where the stomach doesn't feel good. Digestion issues. 3 planets in the 4th house, one of them being the moon in Virgo. I must emotionally digest life in order to physically digest life. I must mentally digest Virgo in order to physically digest. Pam?
I think that also the stronger he becomes in his physical body, Taurus, you know, and Jupiter square the nodes from the 2nd house, the physical body, the stronger his boundaries will be. So the stuff that invades him will be less intrusive. It's not saying it won't exist, but you'll be able to have another set of tool skills to deal with it instead of being kind of overwhelmed by it. You know, so really, and also the 2nd house square the nodes. I mean, I wouldn't mind talking a little bit about money, because what's your relationship to money?
It's been changing recently, but I grew up in middle class America, so my family always provided a lot and too much, I think, and so birthdays and Christmases were always these massive affairs, and I initially reacted against that as I got older, 18, 19, but still accepted gifts, but kind of not things. And so, but through my 20s, it was a lot of reaction against that. And when I left for Asia when I was 24, I sold everything I had, everything. And I didn't know if I was coming back to the country. So this Jupiter return, good sense of faith during that time, but not really the best idea for a Sun in Taurus. And only now I feel like am I really coming back through astrology, understanding how important it is to have the ground and things and tools to create what I want to. But so I'm now at a point where I'm trying to call in a lot more money, and I think I'm doing pretty well, and I'm going to do better.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I'm hearing a lot out of you is, and I understand because I think we all do this, is that we so don't want to be the thing we dislike. And when we see ourselves becoming like them, it horrifies us. And I know that's what I so don't want to be them, that the thing that is part of them in me, I reject, and that's like cutting off limbs, And so it's learning to have those things that are a part of you, but do it on your terms. Yeah. But I do think sometimes we have to just cut it clean and cruise and slowly reintegrate and make it our own, which is Taurus, second house, which is your own value system. Jupiter in the second house is creating, you skipped creating your own value system. So your whole life, the idea of going to Asia makes sense to me because you're like, boom, I got to do this myself. So you're in a huge process of creating your own value system. What matters to you on your terms?
That's an interesting thing, because then we could look at the value systems. I'm going to always take us back to physiological. Then we could start looking at valuing the body and the food in the body, and working through that. And a moon in Virgo in the 4th, working through judgments about food. And learning to, there could be a part in here, because there's so many issues about life force. You can look at that moon in Virgo wanting to get judgmental enough about food that I can't eat that, I can't eat that, I can't eat that, I can't eat that, and pretty soon there's nothing left to eat. And so there's another way of undermining that life force again. And so learning some of, just like you have to learn to not cut off the limbs of the body and accept these various facets of ourselves, it's also being able to, and Pluto and Virgo, Lord knows I've got this one to deal with, of being able to eat the greasy potato chips and see it as manna from heaven. It doesn't mean it's what I should have as a daily diet, but being able to, see sustenance in all food. All of us have to learn how to do that. and then still learn to make what's a healthier choice and a healthier choice every day. But sometimes you put Uranus in the 6th, there can be strong judgments of food too. And we'll have to learn to be much more loving to all foods as we are choosing better foods for us day in, day out, year in, year out, as our lifestyles change.
But I just
Go ahead.
I still can't fathom why, when these food allergies and food intolerances started coming about, how it was such a quick kind of procession into this rather large volume of allergies or intolerances that I have right now. It came, after I was in Asia, and it's a big list of things that my body cannot digest anymore.
Well, we got Neptune opposing Venus, so we've got the whole white blood cell issue. And so that when the Neptune system is attacked, or when the immune system is weakened, Neptune immune system, when it is weakened, Venus opposing Neptune, Venus white blood cells, we can turn things into allergies and autoimmune issues. So you know, there can still, and I can also see this possibly liver stagnation. Jess?
I have two comments actually on that. There's a book called Cleanse and Purify Thyself by a naturopath named Richard Anderson. He talks in there about if there is a parasitic infestation, that you can actually create significant food allergies as a result. So, oh, do you have it? Oh, good. Yeah, that's a fantastic book. He also created a cleanse that I've probably done 15 or 20 different types of intestinal cleanses over the years. That's by far the most complete, thorough that I've ever done. But he talks in there at some point about food allergies as a result of having
Parasitic
parasitic
imbalances.
toxicity. And being that you were over in Asia, is that when they came on?
Well, so that's also when I started to notice that, like, I wasn't digesting a lot when I was out there, and then I got sick pretty early into my trip. Like, I got this massive bacterial thing in me, and so yeah, then a lot of these food allergies that I'd never really had before, they started coming in pretty big, and then just kind of escalated over the next year, 2 years, to a point where, like, where it is now.
I would suggest, there's 2 volumes. The first volume is more informational as far as the physiology. The second volume, he takes more of a spiritual approach, but since you're trying to look at the physical level of detoxifying, I would definitely suggest the first.
He could be both. Richard
Volume.
Anderson is the author. Richard Anderson.
And he has he created a 28-day cleanse it's been refined, I think, for the last 30 years into the program that it is now. And it's fantastic. It's expensive, but it's phenomenal. The results are phenomenal if you follow it all the way very strictly. My other comment was,
Before you go into that, I want to just quickly say something. You know, this whole thing, Pluto rules bacteria, viruses, and parasites. But as I observe some of this Pluto and Libra generational thing, and they've got all this energy to be in relationship, to relate, I sometimes wonder if this Pluto and Libra generation isn't going to be more susceptible to parasites, which are always looking for the host to latch onto, and the Pluto and Libra generation being so quick to merge that they can attract that. And so this will reiterate this whole thing of deserving your own life force and deserving your own body to live in.
You don't have to share it with the others.
No need to share. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Jess, go ahead.
no, I was just also going to comment on the Jupiter square the nodes and having that liver imbalance. And as we know, metaphysically, liver is associated with anger, and in Chinese medicine, it's also associated with anger. In Chinese medicine, it can be treated through herbs, it can be treated through acupuncture, but the fastest way, if you're having liver toxicity, is to go get intense exercise. And so looking at the sun in Taurus, I'm wondering if maybe increasing outdoor exercise as a release of anger, as a way to release liver stagnation or any repressed anger, would obviously then also affect the lungs as well. So as far as strengthening.
Part of the reason I moved to Boulder is because I know I want to do more physical activities, but outside, not in a gym. It's not really my style. And so, yeah.
Definite.
Do you think that this Jupiter, like a lot of those problems that came in, they came in that year of my Jupiter return, you know? And so I'm wondering if that was activating that whole Jupiter.
Oh, it could be. Those problems came, you went to Asia and when you were 24, Jupiter returned.
Yeah.
Yep, I mean, this that we're looking at with the solar return was your 1995 with the lung, so it's not that. But yes, at the age 24, Jupiter return, yeah.
But that started bringing in the allergies, like, you know, and the inabilities to digest.
If that was caused by some type of parasitic ingestion, that, again, could commonly show as allergies. And I've seen that with other people. I don't know if you've seen it, Jess. I've seen it with people who have parasitic issues of having allergy issues, skin issues. Those seem to be two common ones that'll come along when there's parasitic imbalances. Okay, so that we can briefly, I'd like to look at this before we continue on and just go. He told us the story before lunch about the fact that when in 1995, and he had each of his lungs collapse just spontaneously for no reason, 6 weeks apart. We took the solar return chart of that year, and we just put it as a bi-reel around this chart. The midheaven of that solar return chart was at 19 degrees Pisces, right on the cusp of the 11th house, the lining of the lungs and the collapsing of the lungs and taking all of this life force out. There was one of the things that I saw showing up for that. I started just drawing arrows with the conjunctions because, of course, they were easy to see. The ascendant for that solar return was at 7-8 degrees Cancer, right on top of his Jupiter. Because Jupiter seems to be a repeating theme that we're starting to come up with here with as we're looking at different things. You know, and Jupiter is joy. Jupiter is jovial. Jupiter is being able to work with. I mean, to me, Jupiter is full of, you know, when you're in your Jupiter, you're full of life. You know, you look at Jupiter ruling Sag, you know, the person who is always the life of the party, you know, that type of thing. So there might be something to some of this. He had the solar return south node exactly on his Chiron. South node, this would be the sympathetic nervous system, Chiron, Taurus. In other words, as I got to these repeating themes, I kept coming up with life force when I looked at these.
Well, Jupiter's in conjunct that. And that's a Jupiter's, isn't that? Yeah, it's a 12.
Jupiter is at 12, Sag,
to 6.
in conjunct.
Yeah,
You're
it's
right,
an
health
inconjunction.
crises.
Yeah, health crises. 7th house, Libra, more.
Milk thistle. Milk thistle is the greatest herb to heal Jupiter in the liver. Okay? You might try doing
oil. Pine oil is also really good for it.
pine oil. Yeah, I've not heard of that one. Anybody else? Anything that you're starting to see? We had both Jupiter and the Moon conjunct Neptune. I'm trying to see. They're in Sag. I'm not necessarily seeing anything with the lungs. Lungs, we're going to be looking for, Uranus. Uranus was right up here at 01 degrees Aquarius. The midheaven is 10, so it wasn't quite there, but it was within a wide orb of that. Uranus, I sometimes will look to the 3rd and 9th axes when I'm trying to work with the breath, which could be the lungs. And here we have the Uranus up here in that one. What else do we see going on?
That chart's really, it's detrimental to see all this stuff because you're in the actual. If you just look at the solar return, there's a lot of obvious stuff. Like Chiron's right on the IC,
Right.
and so like that. I mean, threatening my life.
Your life.
I mean,
Yeah,
and then,
the ICMC.
but that Chiron is squaring Jupiter and the Moon in the 6th.
Yes. Yep.
And so that seems really powerful too.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean,
And then you put my ruling planet, Mercury, goes into the 12th, so hospitalization, some sort, for the year. That Mercury is also opposed Jupiter and the Moon in the 6th.
in the solar return chart.
In the solar return chart, yeah.
Okay, we'll flip back and forth. So when we look at the solar return chart on its own, okay, I'm doing this fast, so I hope I'm doing it correct. I heard Chiron down here on the IC. Okay. And I heard, what was over, something was in the 12th?
Yeah, Mercury is at 15 Gemini. And then
And where was that Jupiter?
Jupiter and the Moon are 12 and 20 Sag in the 6th. Jupiter's 12. Moon is 20 Sag.
Where was Uranus?
Uranus, Neptune up there in the 7th. Uranus just moved into Aquarius, 0. Neptune's at 25 Capricorn.
Obviously, not everybody had lungs collapse when Jupiter went into Aquarius,
Uranus.
or when Uranus ran into Aquarius. But for this, for this guy, you know, we could see where this was affecting him with that. I'm just trying to. Oh, that was a trine. But the rulers of these right here, the health crises that we start to see, Sag, Gemini, the breath.
Yeah. So Jupiter, I mean Jupiter's there in the
Or,
ruler,
yeah,
the
Jupiter.
ruler of the 6th.
I have a question. I don't really understand the asteroids all that well, but if you put the asteroid, because mine just shows it now, the asteroid Pallas is sitting conjunct his ascendant. Does that have any specific bearing on this?
Go for it.
For the solar return.
Solar return.
Well, it does seem like it's, you know, plays some sort of significant role, doesn't it? You know, that's interesting.
Well, what is
The warrior.
Could you, the warrior.
Pallas Athena is the social goddess, the social justice goddess, but it can be the warrior goddess.
She's actually in the 12th.
In the 12th.
Yeah, she's just above the line.
Yeah, she's
She has a lot to do with strategy and mental creativity. And she's opposite my Venus and conjunct my Neptune in my
Yeah,
birth chart.
In the
So
natal chart, it's in Sag.
it's really
With that.
powerfully placed in my chart.
Because he has Scorpio Taurus intercepted in the birth chart, is it always intercepted in the solar return?
No,
Oh, it's not.
no,
So-
it's not.
And this one it is.
He's got it intercepted
not.
in this one too.
Yeah.
Is this, is it again?
Intercepted in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
in the 6th, 12th.
No,
Yeah.
in the 5th.
No,
Fifth-
511.
Okay.
Interception, but
511.
5/11,
Yeah.
Right.
lungs 11th,
Uh-huh.
5th life
South
force.
node,
And the stuff.
South node in Taurus in the, South node in Taurus in the 11th. Intercepted again, so that's still past trauma coming through.
Yeah.
And a repeating theme with Pluto. Transiting Pluto being in the 5th,
Yeah,
right? So that's.
Well, yeah, but it's interesting because, well, I guess Pluto is retrograde, but it's close to the 6th cusp.
Well, it is, but it's retrograde, so I would read it in both.
Mhm.
Yeah, and because it's in the intercepted sign, I would definitely read it in both.
yeah. Metaphysically, you know, the nice thing is that this time you lived. Because I mean, I just think that
he has a job to do.
yes,
You just think that what?
you came here to learn how to recover your life force this lifetime. And all these little issues that go on, whatever we want to call these imbalances, they're just the knock on the mental door to say, you know, hey, it's time for me to decide that I deserve to be here, I want to be here.
You get, when you see, you know, there's a T-square between Sun, Pluto, and Mars.
And the solar return chart,
Yeah.
help me put them in.
Sun, 25 Taurus.
Give me the house first. Sun in the 11th at 25 Taurus.
Opposite Pluto, 29 Sag. In the 5th.
And the 5th.
29 Scorpio.
I'm sorry, 29
Yeah.
Scorpio. And then Mars is at 26 Leo in the 3rd.
There's those lungs again.
pretty serious surgery, eh? Like, when
Yeah,
you get
the
Mars,
serious,
Pluto, and the Sun.
yeah, the serious surgery, but also the whole lungs thing with the 3rd and the 11th, and affecting the literally life and death, and your ability to life force.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Especially because the natal Saturn's right there, 2025 Leo, where that Mars is.
Yes.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yes.
That's it then.
The whole, it's like it's life or death.
Yeah.
And it's like you just got to say, I choose life. I choose life.
So you're going to do liver cleanses. You're going to
Yes,
do
liver cleanses,
parasitic cleanses.
parasitic
And
cleanses.
you're going to eat food.
Listen to Mama Chris.
So,
Mama Chris.
maybe you're gonna find some food that I can eat.
Well, you
But-
do the cleanses first, and
Yes.
then you'll eat food.
Yes. Yes, because when the liver's cleansed, the liver can process food. The liver can process all the nutrients in the food.
What do you think about alcohol in this picture?
Alcohol is, the liver, when the liver has just a little bit of alcohol, many things in the body actually work better. But that little bit of alcohol for men is supposed to be 2 cocktails a day, 1 or 2 cocktails a day. But you start going into any type of liver issue, you start going into any alcoholism issues, and it'll take your liver out. And then there are those that feel that if you're not into alcohol, then you don't have to start. And there's other ways to relax. There's other ways to help everything in the body flow better. So you might be someone who's very sensitive to alcohol. Especially with a sensitive liver. But you can have, the other thing that goes on, and that's a real big issue in our world today, is, remember we talked about this, the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease or something like that, to people who never drink alcohol that still get a toxic liver. And so that toxic liver, again, the liver is the main organ in the body to process out impurities, to process through the toxins. And there's so much toxins in our modern world that we all need to have good, functioning, clean livers. And yours is very emphasized. Neptune in Sag. That could be another one that could say Neptune in Sag, toxicities of the liver. That's a generational issue for the Neptune in Sagittarius. Anybody else? Questions, comments on this chart? This has been a very good example. Thank you, Verdeluz.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Questions or comments with anything? All right, everybody, we're going to do one more chart together for this afternoon. And our volunteer for this chart is Pamela. And this is the Pamela born in Los Angeles, who has the rising sign of 5 degrees Aquarius. Okay, and so I think what we might do this time around, let's get a little background from Pam in regards to anything she's aware of in maternal, paternal history,
Yeah.
personal.
The
Pam.
Oh, okay, so the couple of things I should probably bring into this is that I was born without a left ear and with damage to my 7th and 8th nerve. My paternal line, my father died of lung cancer. His father died of TB. I almost died when I was 30 of a really unusual mono that was the worst I'd ever seen. I had a fever for 2.5 months. It kept spiking at 107. And they didn't know what it was. And then it kind of left. My I don't know, those are the really intense health stuff. I had a lot of surgeries from maybe 5 to 20. No one really remembers how many. There was really good things about it, but I had to really process through all the trauma. I had a lot of medication that I started having really bad, intense hallucinations when I was in the hospital. But, they end up, it's one of those things in the long run, they've been totally insightful and really interesting. But I've had to work through the trauma of all of it first. I was sexualized very young. What else would be health stuff?
How young?
8.
Very young.
Yeah.
By
Really.
choice?
It was a lot of sex play. Yeah. It was someone my own age. So, yeah, it was a lot that, And then everything kind of got shut down till I was almost 30. So there was a lot of trauma with that I had to work through. And then my hearing, actually, I'm deaf in my left ear, but my hearing has rejuvenated 50% through, I think, all the work I've done with psychic surgeons and with hands-on Rolfing, which I did craniosacral work for. I go every month. I did it for 4 years. And it's that, and I think the psychic surgery, because it's working on the spiritual level and then working on the physical level.
So were you born without a left ear?
Yeah, and all the surgeries were reconstructive surgeries, and the ear I have now is made from plastic and my ribs. Yeah. I don't remember.
She just started.
Yeah, I
You
just
guys
started.
didn't miss anything.
So and then the health stuff, like I said, I had had dreams. Talking about self-manifestation, I'd had dreams that I died on my 30th birthday, and so of course, 10 days from my 30th birthday, I get this horrible sickness. I'm hallucinating. I mean, it was a nightmare.
The mono.
Yeah, horrible, and they didn't know what was wrong with me. And my pancreas was really, really inflamed, and then I had fevers for a really long time, and the last one spiked at 102, and then it stopped.
Okay, so question. You said you were born without a 7th and 8th nerve? What's
No,
that?
damage to the 7th and the 8th nerve. So
Damage.
7th nerve is its 7th nerve is visual, so I don't see out of my left eye, and then I think the 8th nerve is the hearing, but the 8th nerve is rejuvenated.
What do you mean 7th and 8th? I mean, aren't there like trillions of nerves in our
Yeah,
body?
those are the ones that were damaged when I was born. Not all my nerves were damaged. Those are the ones that were.
Was it,
No, it's okay.
was it damaged during the birthing process? Or okay.
Congenital.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned your paternal side. What about your maternal side?
There isn't really a lot of health stuff with them. I mean, they're actually really hardy people. But my grandfather did die of prostate cancer, my mother's father. But, they were really hardy, pretty much. Nothing, extreme, no extreme health stuff.
Are they aware of any reasons for your congenital birth defects?
No, my mother thinks it's x-rays, but, who knows? She had an x-ray. They don't know.
Okay. All right. Anybody have any questions about historically before we move in? We've got enough information to start with. And so something that I want to point out just right off the bat, so we can see that we are dealing, does it upset you if I say a physical deformity?
No, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
It's no big deal for me.
Okay, all right. Saturn in the first house, Saturn in Aquarius, Saturn retrograde. It's repeating some type of physical trauma that we have to live through. Many times when you see 8th house Plutos, you can see some genetics issues that may or may not create actual deformities on that physical appearance level. And we got a soul with an Aquarius rising too. You know that Aquarius rising, which means it can mean traumatic birth.
And South Node in 12th house.
And South Node in the 11th house, yes.
And just looking, feeling different, Aquarius
Yes.
rising.
Yes, yes. So there could have been, with this Aquarius rising and the 8th house Pluto and 4 planets in the 8th house, there could have been some resistance to that whole individuating process, the deeper metaphysical reason of coming in, being different. Okay? But sticking with the physical, again, we can see when there are Pluto in the 8th, doesn't always mean some genetic issue or deformity issue, but it could mean some type of genetics that would lead to that. Saturn in the 1st, not always an absolute, but not unusual to see that. Now, she said she was born without a left ear and damage to the left eye, correct? And then, again, the hearing issues on the left side. In a woman, the left eye is ruled by the sun. And so now we can go and look in the 8th house. She has sun in the 8th house. Sometimes when you see planets in the 8th house or in Scorpio, you can see, again, genetic issues. Being born with something that way. Sun in the 8th. That can put it there. Kim?
It's also semi-square Saturn. Isn't that a semi-square?
It's a sesquiquadrate.
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 So does quadrate Saturn.
Yes,
So,
yes, which can...
which is a stressful aspect,
Yes,
correct?
which is a stressful aspect, and it's a fairly tight one, less than 1 degree. So definitely, good one. Yep. So back to the whole, I just wanted to point those out right away because we could see those, okay? Need for lots of surgeries. Saturn, 1st house. Mars ruling surgery, 1st house. You see that? Mars in the 7th house. Surgeries that affect beauty. Surgeries, a sun in Libra. Surgeries that affect that visual of how we will see someone. Sometimes it's one thing to be born with a deformity that the body has clothes that it doesn't show, or a deformity that is a small or of a minor level. This is a deformity to the face, and the face can be also the 1st house, and that's where that Saturn is. So you can start to see some of those issues. Before we get ourselves going into the metaphysics, which we have a tendency to want to do, let's just continue to try to look at different things from a physiological basis, okay?
So
Chris?
the very first thing that popped out at me when she said she almost died when she was 30,
Yes?
her progressed sun was on the Sun-Neptune midpoint at 30. Yeah.
And
I'm on the Moon Neptune, Moon Neptune
Neptune,
midpoint.
midpoint. And Moon and Neptune being the fluids, being the immune system, the mononucleosis. Mono is a virus, isn't it? Is mono a virus or a bacteria? Virus?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just ask you, do you know where you spent your birthday that year?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you know where you celebrated your birthday that year?
I was in Los Angeles.
Okay, there we go. Bertolucci, tell us on that one. So that was a good one, though, 30, and the midpoint of that Moon, Neptune, and we're looking at the whole mono thing, which is the fluids, the Moon, the Neptune, the immune system, the really heavy stuff right there. That can go on with that, definitely.
Neptune symbolically, like the whole, because mono just wipes you out,
Yeah.
right? And like Neptune, I mean,
And the
you're
fever was horrible fever.
fever.
Horrible.
Well, that would have put that midpoint, that sun squaring Mars.
And
right? Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so fever.
yeah, fever. Yeah, the fever with Mars, and then as Other Kim had pointed out virus Scorpio, this Moon-Neptune conjunction in Scorpio. Okay, so you start to see this. And 4 planets in the 8th house. She could be susceptible to things like viruses and bacteria and even perhaps the parasite issue, because those are all ruled by 8th house Pluto Scorpio. So there we go with that. Okay. If we have a Cancer on the 6th house cusp, that can mean also the same stuff. That can mean an immune system, 6th opposing the 12th, both having to work with that axis. That can mean that there can be swellings, there can be fluidity issues, there can be the whole congestion issues that can come along. And this is kind of almost, again, like a lifelong thing. And the ruler of that Cancer is Moon in Scorpio in the 9th. There could be the congestions that can come on from viruses. And also, I wonder if she's had lots of surgeries and lots of drugs, okay? When she gets a cold or a flu, remember the cold is the cure. It's the mucus the body creates to try to flush out toxins. Mm-hmm. And so perhaps the reason why she got so sick from the mono was all the drugs flushing out toxins.
That's exactly what I thought. I thought, it was a purification process to get all of that medication that was in the cells out, I mean, I totally agree with that.
Okay. Yep. And so who else? Anybody else starting to see some things? You see something?
In the solar return world.
Go for it. Bring it in.
Or you have
We're
like 6 planets in the 6th house.
Oh.
And Moon-Pluto conjunction exact. And
That was when I got sick?
the solar return chart for that year.
Solar return chart for when you were 30 and had the mono.
Yeah.
What was it?
6 planets in the 6th house, including a Moon-Pluto conjunction, and that would that have been in Scorpio?
Yes.
And so there's all of the moon and all the Plutovirus, moon fluids, the lymphatic system. So this is when you find Cancer on the 6th house cusp, you have someone that you want to be very careful with the lymphatic system, because the lymphs, what do the lymphs do? They carry the toxins out of the system. The lymph also carries all the white blood cells, so that we can fight whatever toxins we have in our environment as well. So just natally, you can be someone who has a sensitive lymph system, Cancer on the 6th house cusp, that ruler moon up there in Scorpio, and keeping that lymphatic system clean, cleansed, moving. Yes, fluid issues are an issue for you.
I have a question.
Yes, Kim.
She's got, it seems pretty wide orb, but she has Jupiter sitting down there in Taurus. It's at 25 degrees, and I know that her Neptune's at 16 degrees. It'd be a very wide orb, but due to the nature of the power of Neptune for the immune system and health, I'm wondering if that couldn't exaggerate those issues.
And a 4th house Jupiter.
Right.
Fluids,
Right.
congestion,
So I'm
lymph.
wondering if that would exaggerate
Yes,
it.
it could.
Or is it too far out of orb?
No, not really. It's we're looking at 9 degrees. Not at all. Not at all. I mean, again, evolutionary astrology as a whole tends to use wider orbs because everything is in process and interrelationship to everything else. And what I've experienced in the health and wellness world is those wide orbs can definitely work. I'll start with tighter orbs, but then when I'm looking for repeating themes, can definitely go into the wider orbs. And a Jupiter in Taurus, Venus, white blood cells, 4th house. So sensitivities, I'm already starting to pick up on, then we got Venus in Virgo, so sensitivities to the white blood cells, okay? We're starting to see repeating themes to sensitivities to the lymphatic system. Transiting Saturn again at the time of that mono was right after the Saturn return. Verda Luz, you see anything else in a solar return chart?
The sun was square Neptune.
Immune system taxed, stressed, vitality stressed, sun.
Well, it was square Neptune, Uranus.
Yeah, there was a Neptune-Uranus conjunction right
Yeah.
then.
And so does mono affect the lungs?
Oh, and Neptune-Uranus is in the 8th.
Lymphatics?
It's part of the Epstein-Barr family, and it causes long-term, if it's not treated, it just causes severe fatigue.
Okay, say it in, repeat it into the mic, please, Jess.
I just was saying that it's part of the Epstein-Barr
Which is?
family. I don't know a lot about.
Autoimmune.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but I don't know much else about it. And if you're not able to move past it, it can cause long-term fatigue issues.
That grand stellium in the 6th in Scorpio, the Moon and Pluto at 26 Scorpio, Venus at 17, Jupiter at 16, and the North Node at 15. And so you can, I mean,
That
it was
was a
just massive.
Strong intent to purify.
Well, that's what the doctor said, that it was like the
Square
worst
Saturn.
case they had ever seen. And the doctor said, well, thank goodness your fever was so high, because it burned the virus out of me, they thought. So, because I didn't have, right after I stopped, I was sick. I did go to graduate school and I was exhausted kind of the first year, but I haven't had any problems with that after at all.
You-
And interestingly, it was the year of her Mars return. So it was sort of like reiterating, Mars, her natal Mars is in Leo and forms a square to that Neptune moon thing. So it's just like it's reiterating that Mars theme because,
The fever.
well, interestingly, that it was the year of her Mars return. So it's like she had maybe spiritually or metaphysically, she had the balls to get through it.
Yeah.
Well, you said that you went to school right after that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so Pallas is like opposite all of the stellium, and so Pallas has a lot to do with the creativity and the arts and the use of the mind, and like, you know, you were doing art, right?
Yeah, I got my master's in art.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What I'm picking up on is when you have an 8th house Pluto, you're, you know, there is still the issue of confronting limitations, or there's still the issue of bringing about a major cataclysm to affect a change. So an 8th house Pluto relative to those 2nd house lessons of survival, of, you know, that physical survival, that physical health, that physical self-reliance. I know as an 8th house Pluto, the things that you can, you know, the crises you can create to just metamorphose into better health. I mean, I see this viral thing really as the catalyst, Pluto, to really get this lymphatic system cleaned out so you can get your health back. Jess?
I don't know if this has any relevance. I'm just curious, I guess, for
Go ahead, honey.
having the Aquarius rising, Pluto in the 8th, and then Neptune in Scorpio. Could this be a soul that's coming in to try and shatter the disillusionment that we are our bodies and our physical projection, as opposed to being a soul entity? You know, could this be a soul that's trying to shed the word I'm looking for?
I will say that I am my body, and I'm proud to have my body. You know, I'm happy with that. It's funny, I had a doctor say to me a while ago, she said, well, you know, do you want some surgery? I'm like, no, I like the way I look. I'm fine with it. And she said, oh, well, it's just your body. I'm like, yeah, it is my body, and I
It's-
like my body.
It's a temple for my soul.
Yeah, and I mean, my body is asymmetrical. Nature is asymmetrical. You know, that nature is,
Yes.
not, you know, that is something I grow into more and more, you know, and that I wouldn't change any of it for the world. I mean, and that's easy to say once I've, you know, almost died and come back 1,000 times, but, you know.
Well, and
And years of suffering, but, you know, it's easy to say now.
That wasn't quite where I was going. If you look at, I mean, there are souls that would come in and not be as comfortable. I mean, Pam's amazing. She's just an awesome spirit that, you know, but like my little sister, for example, has dealt with a lot of physical issue. She's had a lot of work to come to grips with. I look different than other people. And how do I be okay with that? How do I become a confident person in that? And I have a sense with her that her soul's trying to shed this attachment to, I have to look like other people in order to be accepted. And I have to fit in.
What you are describing,
know-
Jessica, between Pam and your sister might be an issue of evolutionary state. You know, and go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so looking at a chart, my question is, can those signs, would that be reflected in what I'm seeing there with Neptune, Pluto, and the ascendant? Is that where you would maybe see some of that if the soul was in a little bit lesser evolved state
Yes.
than where Pam's at? Is that
Yes.
how it would be reflected?
Yes.
Sorry, that was a really long way to ask a short question.
And if you look at Pam's chart and you see that she has, you know, 4 planets in the 8th house, and Uranus, Balsamic, Pluto, Mercury, Balsamic, the Sun in Libra, I think what we could see here is a resistance to learning how to physically survive on her own. And so I see that the physical deformity issues she had, yes, they definitely helped her soul accelerate its spiritualization process. She has Neptune in the 9th and in Scorpio, so going to be asking deep philosophical, spiritual questions and learning to deeply emotionally love herself, Neptune, or Moon, Balsamic Neptune. But what I see is a resistance to taking care of herself and wanting to be codependent. And so she came in this lifetime where the physical deformities were the vehicle to help her learn how to take care of her own survival on a physical level. It was more the physical level than the spiritual level, or the greater lesson of the two.
I mean, also, and the reality is that you can be emotionally really damaged and still get a lot of people to take care of you. You know, I mean, I think it's
Yes.
complicated. I mean, the physicality really sets a barrier up.
Yep.
That really, I have been so forced to be on my own.
Yep.
In a way, and that I don't think anything else could have ever given me.
Well,
Oh, okay, 2 more questions and then no more metaphysics. Physics. Fergaluz?
Well, mine has to do with physics.
Okay, metaphysics exists outside of class. Then I know we can't separate it, but it's so easy and we're so drawn. Go ahead.
I'm wanting to get to the Pluto formula a little bit more because we have Uranus and Pluto conjunct in the 8th, and I want to speak to that.
Okay?
And then I don't know how to read that. And then the exact Pluto polarity is Chiron. And, you know, we had this kind of,
Health crises.
and born also wounded.
Born wounded, yes.
And I was trying to look for the ear in the chart because that should be obvious. And
Venus would be one of them. Mercury would be the other.
well, yeah, I was seeing it.
7th house.
Taurus,
Chiron in the 2nd.
Chiron in the 2nd. That's where I was getting that as
Could-
that primal wound from birth. I mean, you know. So I was just trying to find that.
The Uranus Balsamic Pluto is creating a healing crisis, Virgo, to shed the past. Okay? So Pam could have also typical 8th house Pluto, South Node in the 11th. Not only is it a signature for trauma, but it could also be the signature of the warrior. And so this could be her way of atoning. There could be atonement that could be brought into this as well. Okay?
You see that in some capacity,
Yes?
and maybe since it's Pisces, it comes through the artistic experiences.
Yes.
But like that, when you see that opposite Pluto, you know, on the polarity point, that has to be like a fundamental. That there's going to be a very profound wound, probably early on, and that's going to have to be integrated. And usually, people will take on a healing path, right?
Yes.
To survive.
Yes. Definitely. Definitely. And with that exact opposition in the 2nd, 8th, born wounded. Born wounded. And in this case, we can be looking at, literally the physical wound. Now, the anatomy of the ear is going to be Mercury. Okay?
So it wouldn't have anything to do with the head as a whole?
Well, if you look at your Eastern chakra system, you have the sun and the moon ruling the ears. Okay? And so, this is where you have to do a certain amount of observation correlation. Not everybody who has Mercury conjunct the sun is going to have ear issues. Although I have Mercury conjunct the sun and I have hearing issues and I have fluid buildup in my ears issues, Scorpio. So you can see Mercury, when you see Mercury sun, you can see that there could be some type of anatomy with the ears that could get involved.
And I'm sorry to go backwards, but did you say that Chiron in Pisces can lend towards,
Chiron, the wounded healer, but Chiron also describing where we will have our deepest wounds. And if you look at Chiron opposing Pluto, the soul, in the 2nd and the 8th, you could look at genetic wounds. You could look at being born with genetic wounds. And that's what her physical deformities are describing.
okay, thank you.
Yep. And with Mercury, balsamic the sun, in Libra in the 8th house. And remember, she was born without a left ear. So born without the ability to hear in the left ear. Mercury, balsamic the sun in Libra. What do I want to hear and what do I not want to hear? And perhaps needing to learn how to do an inner hearing. And I could start to describe some of that. And now, she did say that she's recovered about 50% of her hearing through the left ear. So we're starting to see these repeating themes with the fluids of the body, with the lymphatic system of the body. So we know that we have somebody who definitely needs to take care of the acid-alkaline balance in the body so that the fluids are allowed to ebb and flow in the healthiest ways. Pam?
Yeah, I drink a ton of water, and I go to the bathroom all the time. I do know keeping fluid is so...
And have you noticed that makes a difference in your life?
It helps, and I just had, full blood workup, so everything's fine. Blood sugar's fine, everything, it's everything seems to be okay, But I have to drink a lot of water. I always have, and I release a lot. I'm always keeping fluid.
If I may ask, how have the bowels been in your life?
I'm more than happy to ask about bowels, because I will tell you. It's funny, Kimmery, because I have bowel problems when I travel. I had bowel problems. I don't know if I even was conscious of whether I had bowels or not for a long time. Seriously. I know. I really took a conscious effort of doing bowel stuff about 10 years ago. And, it's been a really gentle process.
Saturn in Aquarius in the 1st house,
Yeah.
frozen bowels.
Yeah.
Also the 8th house, Pluto. Go ahead.
It's gotten a lot better. I've recently I was saying, also with my weight, it's in the last couple of years, things have really stabilized with my bowel stuff. I'm able to, I'm off any kind of help, like with the colon cleanse or anything like that, and I have really good dietary stuff, and I take my I take my, supplements, and I can go poop like twice a day, and that's great, and I feel really good about that, But if I travel, I get a jarred, but I'm working better at it.
Let's give her a round of applause for 2 bowel movements a day. Chris, we've been together
It was hokey.
We can edit it out.
I was just going to mention that that Saturn in the 1st is in conjunct that Mercury. conjunct Sun, right?
Good
So,
one, sweetie.
Yeah.
Good one, sweetie. The
The-
Saturn in the first, look at this. The Saturn in the first is in conjunct the Saturn in Mercury.
Oh, yeah.
The Mercury Sun, the Saturn,
is,
yep. Good one. So there's the deformity of the ear to the physical body.
Oh, yeah.
And the ruler is balsamic conjunct Pluto.
Now, the whole nervous system is ruled by Uranus. And you see where we have an 8th house. Well, no, honey, it's a trine. It's not, is it trine? It's an in conjunct. There's,
Yeah, but it's out of sun.
yep.
And it's wide, so.
Well, it's very wide. It's
Yeah.
like 10 degrees, but
Gotcha. Now, Uranus ruling the nervous system, okay? And so the nerve damage that Maureen has had to the nerve damage to the left ear, or Pam, sorry, thank you. The nerve damage that Pam has had to the left ear and the nerve damage that Pam has had to the left eye.
Well, I also have, there's a yod there with the Sun, Mars, and the Chiron. There's, what is it, the yod's 135?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a
Well, no, 150.
150. Oh, yeah,
150.
there's a Sun, Chiron in conjunct, and a Mars, Chiron in conjunct.
So there we could see the woundedness that some of the physical deformities would create in relationships, furthering that need to learn how to be self-reliant and the need of learning how to physically survive, okay? It might also further the whole, this would be the blood, all right, although you could start to get some of the lymphatic stuff in through the Chiron and Pisces, with the Mars fever. You could start to see that stuff in there again. But I wanted to say that Uranus, when you see Uranus in the 8th house, or you see Uranus in Scorpio, there can be some possibilities of genetic issues. And you could see genetic issues to the nerves.
And with Aquarius being the ruler, the ascendant, boy, my brain is really on a hike. So with Aquarius being the ascendant, ruler Uranus in the 8th, that's, there you go. There's the 7th and 8th nerve, Pam?
Yeah.
So there's the nerve thing, right? With Uranus ruling the nerves?
Yep. What else? Who else? Pam, any questions for us?
No. Other than what do you guys recommend, as, I'm going to be 44, recommend, like, health-wise to help me, prepare for anything that possibly break down or would be weakened. So we like the idea of really helping the lymphatic system and working with the lymphatic
Yes,
system.
and part of cleansing the lymphatics is keeping the immune system strong and healthy.
Sure.
So the immune herbs, and that was one thing that I forgot that I was going to mention with Vertiluse, is because we saw that liver stuff for Vertiluse, it might work to do the cell salt for the liver, which I think is going to be the Jupiter cell salt, although we'll need to look at the list. Okay? Pam, again, to keep the lymphatic system clean, it's not just water, it is also having a healthier immune system, because you can be susceptible to viruses and bacteria. Sure. Okay? So I was saying, Jesse, are you aware, anybody aware of anything nutritionally for the lymphatic system? Lots of times it's decreased toxin, getting the toxins out of the body. It's the acid-alkaline balance. Kim?
Well, didn't you mention the trampoline? And I was just going to say that the reason that I bring that up is because I see a couple of aspects to her son that circulation would be something she'd want to keep an eye on too.
Yes.
The in conjunct to the moon, conjunct the Neptune, because the moon's conjunct to the Neptune and then it's in conjunct to the sun.
7 stressful aspects to the moon.
And then her
To the
Saturn,
sun, to the sun.
her Saturn also has an aspect to the sun that's not. So,
Can I just
buy a
say-
trampoline.
Can I just say that also, though, on a more positive note, she does have Jupiter and Taurus conjunct her IC, like, well, yeah, pretty much conjunct her IC. And that, to me, whenever I see Jupiter in an earth sign, particularly in the sign of Taurus, which I do equate to the body myself, I just think that's a blessing that you,
Also the ruler of my self-note.
and, you know, it's a blessing that you gave yourself. You're just a strong woman, you know, organically. That's how come you survived. I mean, how many of us could survive 20 surgeries and fevers of 107?
That's the signature of those 8th house planets or planets in Taurus, and that ability to physically survive life and death issues.
It's also rejuvenation.
Rejuvenation, exactly. Rejuvenation is a real biggie. So yeah, so the whole little rebounder trampoline thing for the lymphatic system. Anybody else? Anybody aware of any specific herbs for the lymph?
I would also encourage her to do grounding exercises, and because of that Aquarius ascendant. So, you know, like lots of goddess poses. You know the goddess pose? Yeah.
What is the goddess pose for the tape?
Okay, for the tape, the goddess pose is when you stand with your feet sort of when you're going to go into triangle pose. And then your arms are horizontal. Oh, you know, the man, you know the man.
The
Da Vinci Man.
Da Vinci Man? The
Yeah.
Da Vinci Man?
And well, yeah, and then you bend your knees, okay? So just to show everybody, don't do put this on the stage.
Oh, sorry, sweetheart.
Arms up, deep breath, bend the knee, hold the pose, up, release, arms down, and repeat. When you're doing it, pull the energy up through the chakras. You should be able to feel it, you know. I'll tell you, for women past 50, they love it.
Yeah, you know, a huge healing came for me because I came in traumatized because of that South Node in the 11th house. You know, I was always so frenetic energy. But really, like, besides doing the years and years of emotional work that I've done, and I've been so diligent about that, and I'm very proud of myself for that. I've worked really hard. But also really doing, I mean, I sat in Tantra group for years and years. I mean, we'd sit naked for 5 days and just cord that root chakra to the ground. And really combining spirituality with my sexuality was humongous amount of internal healing occurred with that. And I was super grateful. So, but I agree, it's really just keeping in body, you know, and being on the ground.
And that's what the goddess pose is.
Yeah.
You know, sitting 5 days naked is maybe a little more interesting. But it's a quickie, right? It's the sort of the quickie substitute.
Okay, all right, troops. Something else that I could see with this Venus-Saturn opposition in the chart, okay, a classic one for that is a susceptibility to perhaps some osteoporosis issues after menopause because of Venus ruling estrogen and Saturn ruling arthritis and the whole skeletal osteoporosis issue. So you would want to be someone who would need to really watch your hormones after menopause or as you are approaching menopause. Okay?
Also with that, either weight-bearing exercises or if you don't like to be at the gym lifting weights, at a bare minimum yoga, because you're supporting your body weight.
I
At
do
least.
Pilates, which I like, because I can bend and stretch.
There you go.
It's not super.
Those would be excellent ones, yeah, to do for you. What else? Anybody else? I mean, anything else? What else do we see going on here? You know, another thing that I could see here is the Moon Mars square, which of course we talked about the whole lymphatic system, the whole fluid system. It may be that once in a while, do you ever have low energy issues? Mars, red blood cells. You know, there could be, you've got so many aspects to the sun, and you've got the Mars square to the moon and Neptune, you know, that you may want to, and Sun, Mercury in Libra, Saturn in the first house, Venus and Mars in the seventh. You may want to pay attention to the whole circulation issue, the whole, you know, heart imbalances issues, circulation issues as you age. So things that cleanse and purify the blood, I would say, could be good for you. So those blood purifiers that we talked about, the various ways to purify blood. Kim?
Did we talk about the cell salts? Because I think that she could also benefit with that Jupiter and ninth house with Neptune and the moon. The silica cell salt may also help her with digesting her food, you know, keeping that process going, and some of those things that can happen.
The liver stuff, I think we talked about it a little bit because we have a moon Neptune in the ninth, and we have Jupiter down there, or we have a moon Neptune, in the ninth in Scorpio, and we have Jupiter down there in the fourth, that there could, you know, every once in a while be some liver congestion, so liver cleanses every so often. But I would say to research the cell salts for the lymphatic system, which, if I'm remembering correctly, might be number 1 or number 2, Cancer and Capricorn. I'm afraid I'm going to learn these cell salts by their astrological name instead of their mineral name. Have to work on that one.